Bad-mouthing someone and getting eavesdropped on. On the wedding night, the groom chased me to settle old scores. In a panic, I pinned him to the bed, sucking, biting, and rubbing against him. Let's focus on the main event first. The man's breathing grew heavy in an instant, flipping me beneath him. You're quite eager. Afterwards, I gnawed on a chicken leg to regain my strength. Get ready. Once I finish eating, I'll have you next. With experience on my side, I'll go all out later. He trembled with fear. Mad. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. I was only 12 years old when I met Xia Yunli. The blood-red sunset dyed half the sky. As twilight mist and light smoke thickened the gathering chill, at that time, I sat by the fast-flowing moat, crying until my eyes turned red. Xia Yunli happened to pass by and saw me standing up, about to jump into the river. He quickly grabbed me. Don't do anything rash. Young lady, let go. I struggled a few times but couldn't break free from his grip, then turned to look back. I saw him. His presence as pure and moist as jade, with waist-length hair and dressed in a moon-white brocade robe with straight lapels that wrapped around his figure. Like an exiled immortal, the first time he looked at me, his expression was dazed. I suppose it was the sight of my tear-streaked, snot-covered face that frightened him. So I quickly pulled out a silk handkerchief to wipe my face, even blowing my nose into it before tossing it onto the railing of the moat, and then prepared to jump down again. Hey, why are you still jumping? His lips twitched as he grabbed me again. I pointed helplessly at my union-embroidered shoes, now blackened from being stepped on, then at the blue-patterned stone slabs by the river. I'm just cleaning my shoes. He awkwardly let go. My mistake. And so, I got to know him. Xia Yunli said he was a wealthy merchant from the south, who had never known hardship since childhood, surrounded by silks and jewels beyond count. I told him I was the daughter of an official family in the capital, spoiled excessively at home, with an overbearing elder sister who took pleasure in bullying me. After listening carefully, he pondered for a moment and asked me, "Do you know what the survival law of the food chain, the strong preying on the weak, is?" "I don't know." I shook my head. "Those with power scheme for more power, those without scheme for influence. Next comes wealth, then luck, then knowledge, then ruthlessness. At the very bottom lies passive acceptance. Right now, you're at the very bottom." Xia Yunli's gaze was heavy. "But I can help you." And so, for years past, I climbed from the bottom of the food chain to the top. I seized power, wealth, talent, and influence, everything within my grasp, with mountains of riches at my disposal. I am beautiful, kind-hearted, and speak with grace, yet rebellious to the core, and I even married Shen Xiannan, the top-ranking general of the Yin dynasty. Of course, the last one was purely coincidental. That day marked the 30th birthday of the great Yin emperor. My father was rewarded with 2 marriage decrees for his meritorious gift, exquisitely crafted yellow satin. An imperial decree betrothed my elder sister to Fu Yan, the son of the vice minister of revenue, a man of unruly nature. Indulging in pleasure-seeking, an imperial decree betrothed me to General Shen Xiannan, a first-rank official, a young general and a national hero who has protected the country. Rumors in the streets say he is moody, bloodthirsty, and cruel, afflicted with a malignant illness, destined to die young. So I sent someone to inquire at the palace and confirmed that he indeed does not have long to live. The eunuch who delivered the message also told me that when the emperor decreed the marriage, Shen Xiannan initially resisted the imperial order and only agreed in the end because he had no other choice. However, the very next day after the marriage decree was issued, he came to my doorstep to fetch the bride. The bridal procession was grand and spectacular, with music and fanfare all the way to the general's residence. I was given full respect, both in appearance and in substance. After returning to the mansion, Shen Xiannan was busy entertaining the officials, while I was locked in the bridal chamber, starving to the point of feeling my chest stick to my back, secretly gnawing on a chicken leg brought by a maid. Just as I was enjoying it, the door suddenly swung open. In the flickering candlelight, a graceful figure slowly appeared in my mostly obscured view beneath the bridal veil. Then, a pair of black cloth boots, slender in size, came to a stop before me. Shin Xiannan stood there for a while before reaching out to lift my bridal veil. Li Wan. When he called my name, his voice was clear and melodious, like the sound of a zither. His gaze was pure, clearer than a spring bubbling with water, and his thin lips curled into a faint, enigmatic smile, not a trace of the rumored ferocity. Most importantly, I'm a sucker for good looks, and his appearance was simply tailor-made for my heart. I naturally revealed a delicate, feminine demeanor, nervously curling my fingers. Shin Xiannan studied me carefully for a moment, his expression calm. I've seen you before. Ah, the sudden surprise was quickly replaced by excitement. Really? When? He took a step closer, his robes brushing against me, forcing me to crane my neck to look up at him. From his commanding height, last year's horse race. His voice was languid, his lips still curved in a smile, yet there was an unmistakable hint of coldness that one couldn't help but notice. I suddenly felt a sense of foreboding in my heart. Sure enough, I heard him say, "You were insulting me to someone else," and at that time, I was standing right near you. I was dumbfounded, my face stiffening for a moment. If I had ever fantasized about the wedding night before the age of 16, it would have been something like cloud-like hair, flower-like face, golden hairpins swaying within the hibiscus-curtained warmth. We'd passed the spring night. Now that it's right before my eyes, why is it turning into such a mess? I stared at the man before me in bewilderment. With his captivating phoenix eyes, he looked every bit the charming fox, yet he was utterly clueless about romance. Thinking back to that horse race, I really was too careless. A year ago, during the grandest horse race among the capital's elite, I had stubbornly begged my father to take me along. At that time, several sisters stood by the corridor, boldly discussing the men on the field, and I happened to pass by, eavesdropping for a while. Unexpectedly, they started talking about the first-ranked General Shin Xiannan. I heard that Shin Xiannan was dashing and heroic when fighting enemies in the northern frontier. What do you think he would be like if he galloped here with a whip? Absolutely unmatched. Majestic and peerless, no one could compare, arrogant and untamed, mighty and domineering. If it's a man like this, I'd be quite fond of him. Me too, me too. As they spoke, they all admired him immensely, their words leaving no room for anyone else. At this point, the conversation had lost its charm, but my rebellious nature couldn't resist stirring the pot. That's not quite right. I gracefully stepped forward and said, "Handsome men can be called dashing and heroic. But if someone is plain-looking, your praise would just sound awkward." The women exclaimed in surprise. Is Shin Xiannan really that ugly? My interest grew even stronger as I replied, "Yes," with a rat-like face and cruel, bloodthirsty tendencies. Their faces genuinely showed expressions of disdain. However, one person raised a question. "Have you seen him in person?" I declared confidently, "Of course I've seen him." To be honest, my earlier descriptions were actually toned down. In reality, he's hawk-shouldered with wolfish eyes, vulture-headed and sparrow-brained, bloated and repulsive, utterly unsightly. Stop it. They couldn't bear to listen any longer. With grim faces and hands covering their ears, they all ran off in dismay. After all that lively commotion, I was the only one left alone to watch the match. I just never expected there'd be a big mouth among them. Shin Xiannan became famous overnight because of me, with ugly and vicious slurs spreading throughout the capital. Looking back now, if he was indeed nearby, it must have been when I was about to slander him, because at the time, I noticed a figure flash past the corner of my eye, but I thought it was just a passerby and paid it no mind. So it's true that there's always a higher mountain. While I was eavesdropping, someone was eavesdropping on me. The old monkey climbed the tree and fell to the ground, utterly humiliated. But I can't admit to this. Am I stupid? I'd admit it. Do I want him to walk away? Or do I want him to trample me mercilessly? So I replied with a grin, "Oh, really? Could it be that young Master Shin has mistaken me for someone else? I don't recall ever visiting that place. I'm a sheltered young lady, not some young man. Even if I went, I wouldn't know how to ride a horse. What would I be doing there?" Shin Xiannan's expression turned cold as he saw my shameless face, his pitch-black eyes staring straight at me until I felt a chill. I'd recognize you even if you were turned to ashes. Ah, haha, I forced a laugh, bending over to tease him. I never expected Shin Lang to remember me so deeply. Since that's the case, today's perfect timing couldn't be better. I changed the subject, pretending to be the flirtatious young master from the storybooks who teases decent folk, and stepped closer to him inch by inch. Shin Sinan remained unmoved, merely arching his indifferent eyes as if to see what tricks I could pull. Growing bolder, I suddenly yanked his arm when we were less than 5 centimeters apart, pulling him forward. Originally, I just wanted to crash into his embrace and make him stop wearing that cold, stern expression. I never expected him to be so weak and frail. As he suddenly leaned forward and threw himself at me, under his impact, I staggered backward, barely managing to hold my ground for a few moments before finally collapsing onto the bed. Our bodies pressed together seamlessly. His sturdy bones dug into me painfully, so I couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. After a long while, Shin Xiannan finally lifted his head from the crook of my fair neck, his eyes misty as if veiled in fog, yet shimmering with lingering traces of tenderness. You woman, how could you be like this? Shin Xiannan was a bit annoyed, his thin lips slightly pursed, a faint layer of sweat covering the philtrum. His sharply defined face was inexplicably alluring under the glow of the red candlelight. I've never experienced love affairs, but I've secretly read many romantic plays and stories. Now, with such an alluring person before me, I cast all caution to the wind. Reaching out to hook my arms around his neck, I planted a kiss on his cheek. Shin Xiannan turned his head, raising an eyebrow at me in surprise, his lips trembling slightly. I guessed he wanted to say something again, so I quickly pressed his head down and leaned close to his ear. Shin Xiannan, don't ruin the mood with your words. His cascading hair emitted a faint fragrance, brushing against my neck and tickling my heart. I deliberately let my soft lips graze his earlobe a few times, light as a feather. His breathing grew heavy in an instant. You're truly a bold woman. His voice turned hoarse as his hand gripped my waist. My heart leaped with joy, and I patted his back lightly, eager to proceed. Let's focus on the matter at hand first. She murmured a few more words against his lips. His lips were incredibly moist, like peeled grapes. How could a mere taste suffice? You're quite impatient, he gasped. I didn't respond, only pressing his head down harder. The bright moon cast spring light throughout the room, with tree shadows swaying and human figures flickering. I don't know when it ended. I only know I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, the red candle on the table had only burned halfway. Shin Xiannan probably didn't sleep. His eyes were bloodshot. His expression was truly peculiar, somewhat helpless, somewhat awkward, and even a little disdainful. I couldn't help but feel guilty and asked him, "What's wrong?" He hesitated, holding back his words. I guessed I might have been too rough, hurting him, or perhaps the position wasn't quite right. But he reached under my pillow with his hand, his gaze burning. Li Wan, what kind of woman are you really? He pursed his lips. Oh dear, isn't this the chicken leg I just stuffed under the pillow in a panic? So embarrassing. I cringed so hard I could dig a hole in the ground with my toes, wishing I could disappear. Staring at Shin Xiannan in disbelief, this person keeps teasing me over and over again. Does he have nothing better to do than pick on others? The atmosphere fell into silence for a moment, yet, growl. Her stomach chose this moment to emit a loud, awkward noise. Shin Xiannan's eyes flickered as he gazed at me, his lips curling with suppressed laughter. I was so embarrassed I broke out in a sweat, but my stomach just wouldn't cooperate. It gurgled again, this time with a drawn-out, fading tale that seemed to go on forever. Ha ha ha, Shin Xiannan burst out laughing. I couldn't hold back either, so I simply grabbed the chicken leg and took a big bite. I'm hungry, you. His eyes widened in shock, his lips trembled twice, and then, still gasping for breath, he continued to laugh. What about you? I mumbled through a mouthful of meat, vaguely responding to his words. Since I'd already lost face, I might as well be bolder. You're still not satisfied. I deliberately spoke those provocative words, staring at his flushed earlobe, feeling slightly more balanced inside. Hurry up and get ready. I leaned closer to him, my voice dripping with ambiguity. After I finish eating, I'll have you. I've been here once before anyway. I know the ropes." His pupils trembled slightly, his face flushing as if smeared with rouge. I blew a warm breath onto his face, teasing him even more. "Once I'm full, I'll go all out, Li Wan, you woman." His voice trembled slightly, mad, but in the end, it was he who handled the matter. I lay on my side on the bed, watching the slumbering Shin Sinan, feeling utterly sleepless. On one hand, I thought his frail health needed immediate care. On the other hand, I couldn't help but marvel at his remarkable stamina. He performed exceptionally well, not at all like someone in poor health. Then I drifted off into a hazy sleep. However, I didn't sleep soundly that night, probably because there was someone lying beside me. At the first light of dawn, I woke up, lying on my side at the edge of the bed. I gazed at Shin Xiannan, whose eyes were tightly shut, his long lashes spread into two shallow crescent moons, his tightly pressed thin lips slightly pale, his face ashen to the point of appearing sickly. Indeed, he looked frail and unwell, yet his sleep was remarkably sound, not moving an inch throughout the night. Lost in thought, I gingerly extended a finger beneath his nose to check for breath. Ah, that's a relief. The happiness of the lower body is still intact. So I lay on my back and pondered how to nurse Shin Sinan back to health. First, dietary therapy, next is pharmacology. I stayed until daybreak before getting up, tucking him in, and then heading to the kitchen. My cooking skills were secretly learned from the cook at home. My mother once taught me that a young lady's hands are meant for embroidery and must never touch the toil of daily chores, fingers without gaps, a life without poverty. But the cook told me, to win a man's heart, you must first win his stomach. Moreover, nourishing the body protects vitality. Given his fragility, he needs even more careful tending. By the time I carried the meal back to the room, Shin Xiannan was already awake. He was draped in plain white and blue robes, sitting by the table sipping tea. When he caught sight of me entering from the corner of his eye, he covered his lips and began to cough. I hurried forward and gently patted his back. Softly, I asked him, "Are you all right?" He waved his hand dismissively. "It's nothing," but his earlobes turned red, probably because now, every time he sees me, he remembers my series of bold moves last night. Just a guess. I found it amusing but kept a straight face as I sat down beside him. Picking up my bowl and chopsticks without a word, he took a few bites, then hesitantly asked, "My lady, what are your plans for today?" With a slight smile, I thought for a moment and replied, "I'd like to go out for a while." Casually, I added, "Husband, would that be all right?" Upon hearing this, Shin Xiannan raised an eyebrow and smiled, his tone returning to the carefree manner of the previous day. "The lady is the mistress of the household, free to come and go as she pleases. There's no need to ask for my permission." I nodded absent-mindedly, took a few bites, and then asked, "Do you have enough money to spend, husband?" Shin Xiannan paused for a moment, then set down his bowl and chopsticks. "Yes." My eyes followed him as he went to the wardrobe, watching as he returned with a small pouch in his hand. I was quite surprised. It was my oversight. He placed the purse in my hand, his features refined and his voice gentle. "You'll always need this when you're out and about." I was momentarily stunned. "No, Shin Xiannan. Could he possibly think I'm asking him for money?" "You've got it wrong," I shouted. Shin Xiannan looked at me in confusion. I quickly grabbed his hand and stuffed the money back into it. "I was asking if you have enough money to spend." Shin Xiannan froze. "What does my lady mean?" I glanced around, then leaned in close to whisper in his ear, "I have money, lots and lots of it. I'll spend it all on you." Shin Xiannan narrowed his eyes with amusement. "Madam, this is..." I blinked my eyes and cheerfully continued, "To keep you as my sugar baby." Shin Xiannan was stunned again. Then his lips curled into a charming smile, his entire expression softening with delight. "Oh," he drawled out the syllable. "I had no idea my wife was a little heiress." "It's true, Shin Sinan." I raised my fingers in a vow. "I'm not lying to you. I have plenty of money, enough to keep you well fed and clothed. I possess many rare and precious medicines, so I can ease your sorrows. I am healthy and will outlive you, so I can accompany you till the end." With every word I spoke, Shinshinan's smile grew wider. By the last sentence, he was nearly laughing himself to tears. What else? He simply put down his bowl and chopsticks, propping his chin with keen interest as he watched me. His upturned phoenix eyes sparkled with brilliance. Like the brightest stars in the night sky, they completely captured my heart. And one more thing. I gazed at him with sincere eyes, speaking cautiously. My heart is full of feelings for you, Shinsinan. I like you. My cheeks flushed slightly, but Shinsinan's eyes flickered, as if with a hint of pain. What if I don't like you? My heart trembled, my nails digging into my palms as I forced an even brighter smile. What does it matter? As long as I like you, that's enough. Anyway, you're already mine, like it or not. You still have to sleep with me. Shinsinan was momentarily stunned. My wife is indeed unique. He studied me carefully, the gloom on his face dissipating in an instant. Don't take the joke I just made to heart. I stared at him, momentarily unable to discern whether he was serious or not. Shinsinan then reached out a hand, cradling my face as carefully as if holding a flower, his gaze utterly sincere and clear, soothingly reassuring. To me, my wife, I naturally grant you favoritism, offering all my generosity. I was instantly captivated. After breakfast, I sat in front of the dressing mirror and applied some light makeup. Still hearing Shinshinan's faint cough in the courtyard at that time. By the time I got into the carriage wearing a pale yellow silk blouse, Shinshinan had already disappeared somewhere. As the carriage galloped toward South Street, I stroked the golden threaded cloud and swallow embroidery on my sleeve, suddenly recalling how I used to cover my face with a white veil whenever I went out back at my parents' home. Partly because I feared being pointed at as an unmarried woman showing her face in public, the second reason was to ensure the hidden assets in my hands remained undiscovered. On the most luxurious commercial street in Yinteng, Shernan Street, I secretly operated 8 shops. That was 4 years ago, when Xia Yunli and I started this business venture with his contribution of 10,000 taels and my 20 taels of silver. After that, under his guidance, the shops were opened one by one. In just 4 short years, I had already become independent, amassing wealth sufficient for a lifetime. The shops covered all aspects of daily life, including gold and silver jewelry, gourmet pastries, fine clothing, and inns for lodging. The annual income wasn't much, roughly 10,000 silver coins. In the past, all the silver I earned was locked away in the warehouses of various shops. The first stop the carriage made was at the South City Tavern. This place had the largest storage space and held the most silver. When we came, I had already called for over 20 servants from the estate to accompany us. After getting off the carriage, I led them straight to the backyard in a grand procession. All along the way, the shop assistants looked at me with strange eyes, because they had never seen me before. Only the shop owner, Wang Yen, bowed and personally came to greet me. Master. He addressed me with utmost respect. I looked at the bustling scene with the tavern filled to capacity and nodded at him in satisfaction. The tavern is doing well. Add another share to your year-end bonus. This was taught by Xia Yunli. He said that business is like cooking. Adding the right amount of heat at the right time makes the meat tender and flavorful. And the same goes for employees, with clear rewards and punishments and proper incentives. Employees will be devoted to serving you wholeheartedly. Sure enough, Wang Yan's attitude became even more reverent. Thank you, Master. Oh, by the way, I asked him as we walked forward, is the house where I keep the rosewood box still heavily guarded? He replied with a bow each time he spoke. Patrol daily, never slackened. Good, take me there. The treasury is located in the westernmost corner of the hotel, surrounded by a full circle of guards for defense. I took out the key from my sleeve and personally opened the door. To be honest, I had only been here once when selecting the location, and in the 5 years since, I had never used this key, so no one had entered. As soon as the door opened, a thick cloud of dust rushed out, accompanied by a musty smell. Madam, allow me. The one leading was the house steward, Uncle Li. I had asked Shinsinan in the morning, and he said Uncle Li was the most reliable in managing people and tasks. So I sought him out before leaving the house. Uncle Li took the men inside to move the boxes. I stood at the doorway. Wang Yan seized the opportunity to bring me a chair, so I sat by the door and waited, counting as I did, 1, 2, 3. By the time they finished moving, an hour had already passed. There are 20 boxes in total, each containing 1,000 taels of silver, plus the silver notes. Just this one stash amounts to 40,000 taels. The crowd was stunned as they gazed at the mountain of boxes piled up. I casually opened one box. It was packed full. With a smile, I called out to them, "Take one each, stuff it in your pockets, and get to work quickly." Got it? Everyone clapped and cheered. The money was distributed, and indeed, the speed and enthusiasm for work increased. Afterward, I took everyone to the remaining shops and moved all the money stored in the warehouses. Since the carriage was flying the banner of the Northern Garrison General and had guards accompanying us, no one dared to cause trouble or attempt a robbery. By the time I returned to the general's residence, it was already getting late. Shin Xiannan has also returned. He watched the grand procession of carriages and horses stop at the back gate, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What does my lady mean by this? I chuckled awkwardly. Using the back gate was my idea. The main entrance is too ostentatious. He shook his head and pointed at the red wooden chest on the lead carriage. "Oh, that's silver." A look of astonishment flashed in his eyes as he pointed to the chests on the following carriages. I grinned. "All silver? Are you serious?" Shin Xiannan raised an eyebrow, his expression thoughtful. "Does my lady perhaps think I'm too poor, that the household silver isn't enough to spend?" "Not at all." I cheerfully ran over to link arms with him, looking up at his face. "Before, you saved every penny, but from now on, I want you to spend money as freely as you wish." Shin Xiannan smiled with a raised lip. "Does my wife truly want me to live off her wealth?" I shook my head and leaned close to his ear. "I want you to eat the meals I cook with my own hands." Shin Xiannan froze for a moment, tilting his head to look at me with deep, unreadable eyes, his emotions hidden beneath a surface as calm as still waters, yet turbulent as rising tides. After a long while, he lowered his head, clenched his fist, and lightly coughed against his lips. When he looked up again, his eyes were once more filled with a dazzling galaxy of stars. "All right. Then I'll consider myself lucky to have found such a treasure in you." His words made my heart bloom with joy. I grabbed his hand and swung it back and forth, feeling like a love-struck maiden. The gentle evening breeze carried waves of floral fragrance, until the last fiery cloud on the horizon faded into the darkness. All the silver from the carriage had already been carried into the mansion. "Let's go. Let's head inside." He raised his hand to brush away the stray hairs by my temple, then couldn't resist giving my nose a playful flick. My heart raced as I replied with a bell-like lingering tone, "All right." During dinner, Shin Xiannan kept piling food onto my plate. Oddly enough, every dish today was my favorite, coupled with the day's exertions. My appetite was particularly hearty. Noticing this, Shin Xiannan became even more enthusiastic about serving me dishes. "Take a bite of meat, enjoy abundant blessings and longevity. Take a bite of egg, be wrapped in wealth and riches. Take a bite of fish head, never worry about food and clothing. Take a bite of garlic, become eloquent and shrewd." He kept talking while putting food into my bowl. I swallowed the rice in my mouth in one gulp and reached out to cover my bowl. "Shin Xiannan, that's enough. Stop giving me more." He then took the meat from his chopsticks and put it into his own mouth. "Eat more, madam. Fair and plump makes you lovable." He deliberately paused and drew out the last syllable. It tickled my heart with longing. So, I buried my head and devoured the bowl clean in one go, then scooped up another big spoonful of rice. Shin Xiannan smiled, as refreshing as a spring breeze. "Now that's my good wife," I thought for a moment, then put down my chopsticks and blushed as I continued. "Actually, my mother also said that women should be plump and fair," but what she meant was, Shin Xiannan's curiosity was instantly piqued, and he too set down his chopsticks to look at me. "A plump and fair-skinned woman is good for bearing children." He nearly choked on his mouthful of rice. Having eaten too much for dinner, the maid helped me take a long walk in the courtyard to aid digestion. By the time I returned to my room, I was so exhausted that my steps were unsteady, weak and drained. I leaned against the bed and drifted off to sleep in a daze, until the door creaked open and Shen Xiannan floated in with unsteady steps. He must have just finished bathing, with most of his hair wet, dripping all over, his pale blue brocade robe loosely hanging on his body, revealing a firm chest. I rubbed my eyes, staring at his breathtaking beauty in a daze. Perhaps my gaze was too intense. Shen Xiannan, drying his hair, suddenly looked up at me. The bright solitary moon, mingled with the faint glow of a lantern hanging in the corridor, cast its light into the pitch-black room, painting a galaxy in the depths of his obsidian eyes. His gaze made me restless, my heart skipping a beat. I quickly averted my eyes and asked him, "Why didn't you light the lamp?" To my surprise, my voice came out husky with desire. My face burned even hotter. Shen Xiannan chuckled deeply, set down the towel in his hand, and walked over to sit by the bed. "Awake, my lady. I saw you were asleep earlier, so I didn't light the lamp." His voice was exceedingly gentle, softer than mist and fireflies, as if holding up a guiding thread, a thread to lead me down the fleeting path of this floating life. I cleared my throat dryly and tried to sit up, bracing myself against the bed. Shen Xiannan, however, pressed his hand on my shoulder and pushed me back onto the bed. "Are you thirsty, my lady? Stay lying down, I'll fetch you some tea." After saying this, he walked to the table, poured a cup of water, then returned to support the back of my neck and helped me drink it down. I was flattered and swallowed the water. I swallowed hard a few more times, barely maintaining my composure, and said to him, "Thank you." I thought he would put me down then, but he didn't let go, holding me close and asking softly, "Are you all right, my lady?" His scorching chest pressed against my face, his warm breath mingling with mine. I shook my head, then felt it wasn't right, so I nodded, responding with the last shred of my rationality. "MMM." He gave a faint smile, his voice even more tender. "Today was my fault. How about I massage your stomach for you, my lady?" MMM. Hearing this, he rubbed his hands together until his palms were warm, then placed them on my abdomen, massaging in slow, circular motions. The warmth continued to seep downward. My discomfort also eased considerably, yet my body grew increasingly limp and boneless. After massaging for a while, he asked, "Does your stomach feel better now, MMM?" He asked softly, "Do you want me to keep massaging?" "I do, you." I suddenly wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. Shen Xiannan was acting very unusual tonight. I suspected he was doing it on purpose, though I had no proof, because his desire was like a spark to tinder, eager to devour me whole. But after a while, he suddenly stopped. I grew impatient, sweating with urgency, my eyes turning red. "Shen Xiannan, why did you stop?" He frowned, looking extremely restrained. "The garlic smell is too strong, truly unbearable." I angrily slapped him. "Wasn't it you who said eating garlic makes one eloquent? You're the one who told me to eat it." "I don't care." He lowered his head, leaning slightly towards my lips, but ultimately didn't kiss me. I got even angrier. "If you don't hurry up, I'll breathe right on you." Shen Xiannan was terrified. When I woke up the next day, my whole body felt sore and weak. Shen Xiannan was even worse off. Lying completely still in deep sleep, his complexion looked quite pale, with only dark circles under his eyes. He coughed occasionally. I felt instantly guilty. I shouldn't have pushed him so hard for 2 consecutive days. What if it went too far and he couldn't take it anymore, ending up done for? Shen Xiannan had both good looks and skills, and I wasn't ready to replace him anytime soon. I hurriedly dressed, bent over the desk to write a line on the paper, and handed it to his lead guard, Mengda. Mengda worked swiftly, truly living up to his position as the second in command. Thus, when Shen Xiannan finished breakfast in his room and went to the hall, seeing rows of elderly people filling the room, the look he gave me was utterly shocked, just like when he saw those silver tails yesterday. "Madam, what is the meaning of this?" I helped him sit down by the chair and explained, "These are all renowned old physicians I've invited to treat you." Indeed, the names I just wrote on the paper were all theirs, since I run a rare medicinal herb shop on South Street. I've befriended many folk healers recorded in the official registers. Shinshinon took a sip of the tea I handed him. My wife is truly a remarkable woman, never failing to surprise me day after day. I was so flattered that I felt embarrassed and waved my hand, saying, as long as my husband is well, I am well. Husband, quickly let them take a look. Upon hearing this, he raised his hand, pulled up his sleeve slightly, and placed it on the pulse pillow. The old miracle doctors took turns examining him, observing, listening, questioning, and feeling his pulse. After a full round, they had thoroughly checked Shinsanan from head to toe, recording every minor and major ailment on paper, which surprisingly filled over 20 pages. From afar, I stared at the densely packed words, my heart pounding with anxiety, and my hands trembling uncontrollably. I wondered, could Shinsanan truly be terminally ill? Unable to resist any longer, I stepped forward and picked up a piece of paper to examine. The result left me dumbfounded. Question 1, 5 facial pimples, distribution, 2 on the forehead, 1 behind the ear, and 2 on the back of the neck. Treatment plan, maintain a light diet, clear heart fire, and reduce sexual activity. Issue 2. Hair is yellowish and slightly dry. Distribution, at the ends of the hair. Treatment plan, regular trimming, grooming, and care. Eat more green vegetables. Reduce sexual activity to avoid excessive internal heat. Issue 3. Dark circles under the eyes, slightly swollen. Distribution, both lower eyelids. Treatment plan, massage the eye area, eat more fruits and green vegetables, avoid staying up late, and reduce sexual activity. Less bedroom matters, less bedroom matters. Could it be that all these miracle doctors have a secret crush on Shinsanan? Or are they just frigid? Otherwise, why would they keep harping on this one point? I rubbed my forehead, utterly torn between laughter and tears. My eyes darted around in circles before I simply curled my lips and shrugged. Seeing this, Shinsanan's furrowed brows knitted together like mountain ridges. Madam, what do you think? Speak up, won't you? If I truly don't have much time left, He coughed lightly a few times as he spoke, his pallid face gaining a faint flush from holding his breath. I just can't let go. Wan, you, cough, 1. It was the first time I heard him call me that, and I was deeply moved. My eyes involuntarily welled up with tears as I walked over to gently pat his back to soothe him. All right, you'd better stop talking now. I covered my lips and whispered the matter on the paper into his ear. Unexpectedly, his coughing grew worse, his face turning so red it seemed about to drip blood. It was unclear whether it was from the coughing or from blushing. No matter how long I tried to soothe him, he didn't get any better. An elderly physician couldn't stand it anymore and interjected, Madam, I think you'd better step out first. I glanced back at the other physicians, who were also nodding in agreement. Feeling utterly flustered, I took delicate lotus steps and left. I thought about watering the newly planted flowers in the backyard and had just walked over when, unexpectedly, I encountered an uninvited guest. A servant reported, Madam, there's a guest at the door asking for you. I pondered for a moment but truly couldn't figure out who it might be, so I lifted my floral-patterned skirt and dashed out, my hair ornaments swaying. At the wide-open gate, 2 guards stood with their spears crossed, blocking the entrance. The person stood with their back turned, tall and composed in demeanor. I recognized him at a glance. It was Xia Yunli. He was still dressed in a moon-white straight-collared brocade robe, with waist-length hair secured by a green jade hairpin. His features refined and elegant, just as he had been the first time I saw him. I remember asking him before, why do you always wear such plain colors? Xia Yunli said, every person's life has a color, and I chose white, the purest sanctity. Then he looked at me and said, and you, Awan, you should be red, the fervor of abundance. No, I shook my head, eager to argue. I don't like red, I prefer yellow, a soft duckling yellow, because it's a gentle color. After I said this, Xia Yunli pressed his lips together and fell silent, his gaze deep and heavy, as if he were seeing something through me. Just like now, I waved my hand in front of his eyes a few times, but it didn't wake him from his daze, so I had to speak up. Brother Yunli, what are you looking at? He snapped out of it immediately, slightly furrowing his brows before forcing a very fake smile at me, his tone indifferent yet carrying a hint of reproach. After traveling for 2 months, the first thing I heard upon returning was Bue telling me the news of your marriage. Bue was the personal maid he left in the capital to oversee his vast properties and relay information at any time. His gaze swept over me before settling firmly on my face. You're getting married. Why didn't you inform me? After 4 years together, I could instantly recognize his restrained anger, a habit of his when upset. I had no choice but to resort to my old tricks. Pretending to be even more aggrieved than him, reaching out with 2 fingers to tug at his sleeve, he wouldn't relent and shook me off. I held on even tighter, even adding a tearful tone to my voice. The timing was too sudden. I didn't expect the emperor to issue an edict so abruptly. Seeing his expression still hadn't softened, I added another sentence. Moreover, the very next day, the Grand General took me as his bride. As soon as the words left my mouth, a cool, weary voice suddenly came from the doorway. Does my lady blame me? I was startled, so much so that I nearly jumped out of my skin. Hurry and turn around. I saw Shen Xiannan standing on the steps, his plain green robe fluttering in the wind. His features were pale, his lips colorless, and his gaze indifferent as he looked at me. You've finished the inspection. I actually felt a pang of guilt, as if I were a thief, and my words came out disjointed. Shen Xiannan didn't respond to me. Instead, staring straight at a certain spot, following his gaze, I realized it was fixed on my hand clutching Xia Yunli's sleeve, and I quickly let go. Seeing me release my grip, he slowly raised his eyes to meet Xia Yunli's in a silent exchange. Both their expressions were tense, as if a battle could erupt at any moment. I was so frightened that I quickly ran over and tugged at Shen Xiannan's arm. Husband, this is the destined benefactor I told you about. His name is Xia Yunli. Yesterday, after I brought the silver into the residence, Shen Xiannan asked me about its source, and I mentioned my encounter with Xia Yunli. Sure enough, after hearing this, his expression softened a little. Oh, since you're Wanwan's friend, please come in. Xia Yunli, however, took over with a gloomy expression. Wan, is this your husband, the renowned great General Shen Xiannan? I nodded. Yes, it's him. Unexpectedly, he spoke without restraint, frail and sickly looking. Perhaps the rumors are exaggerated. My face turned pale with fright, and I blinked at him frantically. Brother Yunli, please stop talking. I hurriedly interrupted him, stiffly turning my head to glance at Shen Xiannan. Fortunately, his expression remained unchanged, even appearing calmer than before. Shen Xiannan sneered coldly. This body of mine bears the scars of battle, a legacy of fighting on the front lines. How could it possibly be compared to the likes of you lowly merchants? As he spoke, he was seized by another violent coughing fit. All right, I said, frightened, quickly patting his back to help him catch his breath. What's wrong with you two? Every time you meet, it's like this. Come, let me help you inside. I held Shen Xiannan's hand and walked towards the door, taking 2 steps before turning back. Brother Yunli, aren't you coming along? Xia Yunli raised an eyebrow and then followed behind me. I was originally going to escort Shen Xiannan back to his room, but he insisted otherwise, so I had to help him sit down in the hall. Thus, the 3 of us took our seats, Shen Xiannan at the northern head seat, Xia Yunli to the east, and me to the west. Across the distance of the hall, Xia Yunli and I chatted about the interesting experiences from this journey, a habit we've maintained for the past 4 years. Then, he pulled out an exquisite brocade box from his sleeve. A gift he had bought for me, because in the past, he often traveled, saw many things, and encountered many wonders, so I frequently asked him for gifts, and he gradually developed the habit of bringing me a gift from every place he visited. Here, try this. As he walked towards me, he opened the brocade box, took out a jade hairpin, stood in front of me, and casually pinned it into my hair. He even cupped my face to adjust it carefully. I was caught off guard by him and forgot to react, just staring at him in a daze. By the time I realized what was happening, I was horrified and could only lean back. Brother Yunli, what are you doing? After I spoke, I quickly looked at Shinsenan, who was indeed so angry that his face turned ashen. I had no choice but to pull out the hairpin, then gave Xia Yunli a strange look. He would never have acted like this before. I remember the last gift he brought me was a necklace. When I couldn't reach to put it on myself and asked him to help, he absolutely refused. Xia Yunli is actually very particular about propriety and etiquette, maintaining impeccable boundaries between men and women. Otherwise, we wouldn't have remained unrelated siblings for so many years. Just today, I don't know what's come over me. What's wrong? Don't you like it? Xia Yunli saw me take off the hairpin. His brows furrowed tightly, and his expression darkened. I shook my head, stood up, and pushed him away. Not exactly. I just want to go back to my room and try putting it on properly in front of the mirror. With that, I handed the hairpin to my personal maid. Xia Yunli gazed at me with a heavy expression for a long while before finally sighing. Let's go, show me around, and then I'll leave. After seeing Xia Yunli off, I returned to the hall only to find Shinsenan already gone. So I had no choice but to look for him in his room. The slightly ajar door let out a few faint coughs from within. I pushed the door open quietly, only to see Shinsenan sitting at my dressing table, holding the green jade hairpin that Xia Yunli had given me. When he noticed my arrival, he merely glanced over before fixing his gaze back on the hairpin in his hand. I stood beside him, not daring to breathe too loudly. After a moment's hesitation, I was about to speak. Shinsenan spoke first. What? Are you sad that he left? I was furious. Shinsenan, what are you saying? I grabbed his arm, snatched the hairpin from his hand, threw it into the brocade box, and pressed closer to him. Shinsenan, there's really nothing between us. Shinsenan was forced by me to lean back against the dressing table, his elongated neck revealing a prominent Adam's apple that stood like a solitary, proud mountain, bobbing with each swallow. I stared intently, feeling my heart race uncontrollably, so I removed the pale yellow outer garment, placed my hands on either side of his shoulders, and pressed my forehead against his, exhaling a fragrant breath. Shinsenan, I exhaled a breath right into his face, my voice softening repeatedly, like ink dissolving, carrying a sticky quality. You're the one who truly grows from the tip of my heart. Shinsenan's intensity dissipated in an instant. Utterly pleased, he teased my lips with his index finger, a glint flashing in his eyes. The next moment I looked, he had already pinned me beneath him. The rouge and powder on the dressing table were scattered all over the floor, yet no one paid them any heed. Shinsenan gazed at me, his eyes dark and heavy, his desire as deep as the sea. He took a ragged breath and said to me, if that's the case, then I'll cling to you for the rest of my life. However, from now on, only I am allowed to pin your hair, otherwise, I'll get jealous. Wan. My heart raced violently, tilting my head slightly, my eyelashes fluttering lightly. I gazed at the sole reflection in his eyes and nodded. All right. Shinsenan then gently pressed his lips to my forehead, moving inch by inch downward, kissing my brows, the tip of my nose, and finally landing on my red lips. Afterward, Shinsenan still hadn't woken up by lunchtime. I instructed the cook to prepare the meal in advance. After finishing my meal and returning to my room, I suddenly remembered the jade hairpin Xia Yunli had given me. I hurried to the dressing table and saw the hairpin lying on the floor, indeed broken into 2 pieces. The hairpin was now whole again, almost indistinguishable from the one Xia Yunli wore in his hair, except for the additional blue jade pendant on this one, which was quite ingeniously crafted. No wonder Shinsenan was so jealous. He must have noticed it too. I carefully placed the broken hairpin back into the brocade box and stored it properly, then headed to the side hall. After a morning of diagnosis and discussion, the physicians had already devised a complete treatment plan. The gist was that Shinsenan's frailty was primarily due to poisoning. The cold he caught in the northern frontier could gradually be expelled, and his weak chi could also be slowly regulated. However, there was currently no remedy to eliminate the poison, so they could only prepare a slow-release medicine to mitigate the damage and pain. Poisoned, I was shocked. I had always thought his poor health was due to the illnesses accumulated from years of marching and fighting in battles. However, a physician explained, "The general must be well aware, this poison has been in his body for quite some time, and it's a rare toxin from foreign lands. Without the antidote, there's no cure. Is there really no other way?" I asked again. Unwilling to accept it, however, they all shook their heads. I lowered my head, feeling utterly dejected. "Madam, we'll go prepare the prescription for the general first." Before leaving, I reminded them again to study it carefully when they returned, trying their best to concoct an antidote. The doctors had only just left when Shinsanan emerged from the room. His face was as pale as paper. I hurriedly urged him to eat lunch and take his medicine. Only then did my anxious heart settle slightly. Recently, Shinsanan has been constantly exhausted. I held back, but ultimately couldn't resist speaking up. "The doctors all said you should reduce bed activities. It's my fault for not exercising restraint. From now on, I was thinking of the right words. Not just Wan wants to," Shinsanan interrupted me. "Wan is tempting, and truth be told, I want to as well." My lips trembled. "But your health." I fell silent for a moment, knowing I shouldn't have asked, but still gripped his arm, hoping for an answer. "Who exactly poisoned it?" Shinsanan's body trembled slightly, the light in his eyes flickering between brightness and shadow, ultimately settling into darkness, his voice icy cold. "Who else could it be?" He gave a light cough, his voice growing even more weary. "It can't be anyone else." Is he referring to the Emperor? I thought about it. In this world, perhaps only that one person could have hurt him. I had heard before that the court feared his achievements overshadowing the throne, and keeping him in the capital was to strip him of his real power. But resorting to such despicable methods hardly befits the dignity of an emperor. So, I widened my eyes and whispered, "How could he?" Yet he uttered just 4 words in the faintest tone, "Fate has decreed it," as if he had already accepted his destiny. But I refused to believe it. I couldn't accept that Shinsanan, so young, would meet his end so soon, nor that my beloved wouldn't live to grow old with me. So I called upon every connection I had to help me search for an antidote, including Xie Yunli. On the 3rd day, it was time for my bridal return. Originally, Shinsanan wasn't feeling well, and I didn't want him to accompany me. After all, I had spent enough time at my maiden home before marriage, and now it was just to repay the debt of childbirth. But Shinsanan insisted, determined to stand by me for appearances. So, before leaving, I had someone fetch a chest from the treasury and place it in the carriage. When we arrived home, it happened to be just as the newly tailored spring outfits were delivered to the estate. My mother was accompanying my sister Lizeo in making selections, while my father sipped his tea, occasionally chuckling and responding with a few words. A lively scene of domestic harmony and prosperity, as if they had completely forgotten what day it was today. But I had long grown accustomed to such scenes. It was Shinsanan who couldn't stay calm, his face instantly darkening. He stood in the center of the hall and began reprimanding my father, ministerly. "His Majesty often instructs that propriety is the foundation of the state. Today, I see neither you nor your wife and daughter show any semblance of propriety. Could it be that you are defying the imperial decree? Oh dear, the general has arrived." Perhaps my father didn't anticipate Shinsanan's official authority to be so imposing. After all, today he was the father-in-law and should have held the superior position. So he turned pale with fright and hurriedly rose to bow. This humble official truly failed to notice earlier. Shinsanan pressed aggressively. "If Minister Li is too aged and dim-sighted, I can petition His Majesty to grant you early retirement, my lord." "No, no." My father frantically waved his hands and kept giving my mother meaningful looks. Seeing this, my mother walked over and affectionately took my arm. Wan, your father and I have missed you so much. Come, we've just made some new clothes today. Zozeo has already picked some, so you should choose a set too." I ignored the slightly uncomfortable remark about Zozeo having already picked some and followed my mother's lead to the clothes rack. After a casual glance, I picked one, but as soon as I held it in my hand, a jade white hand reached over, My hand was left empty. I just happened to have my eye on this dress. I shook my head, looking at her with an incurably sorrowful gaze. Liseo has always been this way since childhood, naturally fond of competing with me. Coveting everything I set my heart on, due to family upheavals in her youth. My mother sent her to live for several years with a distant relative of the current prime minister, a cousin of his aunt, at the age of 14. The blossoming and strikingly beautiful Liseo audaciously sneaked into the prime minister's study with the intent to seduce him, only to be furiously sent back in disgrace. My mother, who had longed for her daughter for years and was burdened by guilt over her absence, has since indulged her in every way, without any boundaries. Her originally cunning and domineering nature was nurtured into even greater arrogance. Shin-Sanan was already seated in the main position. He let out a light chuckle, then slammed the teacup heavily onto the table, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Minister Li truly knows how to raise a daughter. No sooner had the words been spoken, my father slammed the table and stood up. How dare you? He curled his lip, pointing at Liseo with a trembling hand. Heartbroken, you blind fool, get back to your room this instant. The cups on the tea table clattered from the tremors, the sound piercing. My mother's face also changed, her heart filled with pity. Liseo, however, remained unfazed, merely casting a disdainful and contemptuous glance at me for a while before turning her gaze to Shin-Sanan. Only then did she turn and leave. Once Liseo left, the atmosphere in the hall grew solemn, with no one speaking. Shin-Sanan sipped his tea with an air of indifference, while my father fawned with an ingratiating smile, and my mother stood stiffly by like a wooden pole. So, I stepped forward and had the servants open the chest. Father, mother, these are the return gifts. I had thought that upon opening the chest, my money-grubbing mother would at least have her eyes light up with greed. To my surprise, she retorted, Li Wan, do you think you're dealing with a beggar? This box full of gleaming silver is worth 1,000 taels. I stood frozen in place. What do you mean? My mother gritted her teeth, her face darkening. Don't think I don't know what you did the other day. Ah, I see now. So it was a case of the snake trying to swallow an elephant. Greed knows no bounds. I always thought they didn't care about me at all, but it turns out they were eyeing the biggest prize. I deliberately played dumb. So that's what mother was after. You should have said so earlier, but I've already given everything to the general now. I gritted my teeth and deliberately emphasized the words the current Grand General. Otherwise, just ask him directly. I playfully pointed my finger in Shin-Sanan's direction, my face full of disdain. Shin-Sanan didn't even bother to look up, carry the contempt through to the end. My mother's face turned completely dark with anger, trembling as she spoke. You finally made it to lunchtime. During the meal, Shin-Sanan kept serving me dishes, acting utterly doting on me. My father and mother no longer dared to make things difficult for me without restraint. Moreover, fearing that Liseo might cause more trouble, they even locked her in her room for meals. Shin-Sanan kept putting food on my plate but barely ate anything himself. Only when he saw I was almost finished eating did he speak up wearily, in a faint voice. Wan will need to start recuperating to prepare for pregnancy soon, so it may be a long time before she can return. I looked up in surprise, turning my gaze to Shin-Sanan. He had never mentioned this plan to me, yet he didn't return my glance. Instead, his eyes gleamed with a dark intensity, not seeking discussion but asserting dominance. As he addressed my father and mother, I trust my esteemed father and mother-in-law are fully aware, though his words were elegantly understated. They prompted my father to respond repeatedly, of course. It must have been his overwhelming dominance that completely crushed me today. After dinner, Shin-Sanan insisted on leaving. Such behavior was quite inconsiderate of the bigger picture. I wasn't enjoying myself much either, so I went along with him. But just as I reached the main gate, Liseo's maid came running to stop me, saying she wanted me to go to her room for a chat. Shin-Sanan shook his head at me. I naturally knew nothing good would come of it, but I went anyway. Liseo pointed at me with a gloomy expression, gnashing her teeth. Li Wan, how dare you deceive me? I laughed. I know exactly what she was referring to. Nothing more than the matter of the marriage decree that day. That day, after my father brought back the marriage decree, my mother, taking advantage of the fact that women of the inner chambers had never shown their faces and the world knew not their appearance, laid out both decrees and let my elder sister choose first. The implication was, although the emperor had betrothed me to Shin Sinan, if she chose him, then the one who would board the Shin family's bridal sedan the next day would be Li Zhao. Li Zhao had always loved testing my boundaries and competing with me, so she came running to ask me, "Rumor has it that Shin Sinan is fierce and brutal. Have you met him?" I shook my head, pretending to be obedient. "Never, then." With his awe-inspiring military might, do you admire him? I still shook my head. "I don't admire him." She then asked again, "So, are you willing to marry him?" I bit my lip and furrowed my brows, pretending to be restrained and uneasy, even squeezing out a few tears at the corners of my eyes. A crude and reckless man, wielding swords and spears, knows nothing of gentleness, hardly a good match. If elder sister desires it, I am willing to marry in her stead. Seeing my obvious reluctance, Li Zhao laughed wildly and directly replied to mother, "Then let's follow the emperor's decree. That short-lived ghost is hers." I even pretended to be heartbroken as I turned and ran back to my room. Actually, I smiled as soon as I closed the door, because I had long heard of Shin Nan's heroic reputation. So what if I lied to you? This time, it's my turn to laugh wildly. "You chose this yourself. I didn't force you. Moreover, the emperor's decree is the same." "Are you really so arrogant as to defy the emperor, Li Wan? What are you saying? Don't keep throwing around accusations of defying the emperor." Her expression softened slightly, but she remained haughty. "If it weren't for you back then, I would definitely." "I don't care what you definitely would have done," I interrupted impatiently. "You'd better give up now. First, Shin Sinan is already mine. Second, he loves me and I love him. We're even planning to have babies." Third sister, you're also of marriageable age. Or is it that Fu Yen doesn't want you anymore? You're talking nonsense. Li Zhao placed her hands on her hips, her eyebrows furrowed in anger. "Li Wan, nothing good ever comes out of your dog's mouth. Just you wait. I'll make you regret this." I turned away with a cold laugh. I'll make you regret this. That night, upon returning to the general's residence, I received word that the eldest daughter of the Li family had been splashed with dog's blood by a masked figure in black. A note was also left: "You're being splashed with dog's blood because your behavior is utterly despicable." The incident quickly spread through every street and alley, becoming the talk of the entire capital. During dinner, I even joked about it with Shin Xiannan. "Wasn't it you who did it?" Shin Xiannan responded indifferently while eating. I shook my head, in an unusually good mood. "Not me. I wanted to do it, but didn't get the chance yet." Actually, 2 years prior, I had already learned to counterattack Li Zhao. Whenever she took a dislike to me and tried to oppress or attack me, I wouldn't resist her openly, but secretly, I always found ways to strike back. Only, before, it was all physical. For example, sneakily hanging a bucket of water above her door, so it would drench her when she pushed it open. Secretly arrange for someone to ambush her on her way back, cover her head with a sack, and beat her up. But this time, it's about tarnishing her reputation. It's about destroying her spirit. Very soon, the news of the Fu family's broken engagement spread quickly. The emperor's decree approving the annulment was also issued. However, there was no further word about the eldest daughter of the Li family's excessive bullying. At night, I absent-mindedly flickered the flickering candle flame. Lost in thought for a moment, Shin Xiannan drank the medicine I had brewed for 2 hours, coughed once, and set down the bowl. "Madam, what's wrong?" I sighed and spoke slowly. After all, I couldn't bear it in my heart. Shin Xiannan paused, looking at me in silence for a moment. "If it were you being humiliated today, what would Li Zhao do?" I thought for a moment and said, "Naturally, I'd feel utterly delighted. Might even add a kick for good measure." He curved the corners of his lips slightly. "Then why should Madam trouble herself over it?" My mood instantly lightened, and I rubbed my face. "My husband is absolutely right. I'm just worrying over nothing. Not over nothing, he corrected. I was surprised. Then what is it? He came over and wrapped his arm around my waist, his voice exceptionally tender. He is a good man. He is my husband's good man. Recently, Shinshinon's complexion has become increasingly rosy, and his coughing has lessened considerably. I pondered that the prescription I prepared last time had been taken dozens of doses and must be working, so I planned to prepare some more. Unexpectedly, that very night, Shinxiannan began coughing up blood. The midnight wind was chilly, howling through the slightly ajar window. Startled awake, I got up to close the window, draping a gauze robe over myself. On my way back, I saw Shinxiannan suddenly cough himself awake from sleep, tilting his head as a mouthful of fresh blood spilled out. My face paled in shock. I rushed over and knelt by the bed, tears welling in my eyes at the sight of the bright red blood staining the pristine brocade sheets. Shinxiannan, are you okay? He slowly opened his eyes, looking utterly exhausted. After gasping heavily for a long time to catch his breath, he finally spoke in a hoarse voice. Wan, did I scare you? My heart was in turmoil, and my eyes ached terribly. Shinxiannan, why are you still worrying about me? What on earth is wrong with you? He shook his head, covering his lips as he coughed lightly again, and I quickly handed him a cup of tea. He took a couple of sips, then reassured me. Wan, don't be afraid, I'm fine. Shinxiannan, stop talking nonsense. This guy really loves to drop the ball at critical moments. On the wedding night, instead of doing what newlyweds should, you came to settle old scores with me. Now you're coughing up blood. Yet you neither address the issue nor leave any last words. Sometimes I'm truly impatient, especially with matters like this. I can't wait a single moment longer, so I turned and rushed to the door, flung it open with a clatter, and called for his guard. Mengda. Wan, came the weak, feeble call of Shinxiannan from behind. Mengde suddenly flew down in front of me from some dark corner. Startled, I straightened up and asked him sternly, what exactly is wrong with your master? Wasn't he perfectly fine just a while ago? Mengde hesitated before speaking. To answer, madam, truth be told, the master hasn't been well since the night of the wedding. What do you mean? I asked in astonishment. The master said he was afraid of frightening you on your first day here. He hesitated for a moment, and also afraid it might be your first experience. Body. His face suddenly turned red. And for a long time, he couldn't squeeze out a single word. I rubbed my temples, exasperated. Body what? Truly, like master, like servant, cut from the same cloth. He heard my impatience and quickly replied, the experience wasn't good. In the blink of an eye, my face turned as red as a date, mainly because I'm a person of action. I don't mind taking the initiative, but being called out on it makes me unbearably shy. So, my eyes darted around, and I shot him a reproachful look. Mengde continued. The master said that although the lady is rumored to be fierce, she is still a woman after all. So that day he took a strong dose of medicine. Moreover, ever since the lady arrived, the master changed the time he takes his medicine. Originally, he would take another dose at midnight, but fearing it would disturb your sleep, he unilaterally moved it to before bedtime. I don't know what kind of emotions I was feeling as I returned to my room. I looked at Shinxiannan lying on the bed inside the warm curtains, his face pale, eyes tightly shut, motionless, like a dead man. If not for his faint breathing, I would have truly thought dead. At the thought of that word, a wave of immense panic suddenly surged over me, as if I were drowning with my legs being pulled down, struggling desperately with no hope of rescue. Suddenly, I realized how much weight Shinxiannan carried in my heart, all night long. I listened to the wind outside slapping banana leaves against the window, staring wide-eyed at the man beside me. Unable to sleep a wink, I thought I should do something about it. The next day, at the break of dawn, I had Mengde fetch a few more renowned doctors from the list to stand by, while I went out myself. It was nearly 9 a.m. when I returned, and thinking Shinxiannan must have woken up by then, I hurried down the corridor straight to his room. But at the end of the hallway, behind the rockery of a small pavilion, I overheard a conversation between two very familiar voices. Shinxiannan, you're really hard to kill." That voice, I was startled. It was actually Se Yunli. I quickly hid in the shadows, listening intently to the conversation. Se Yunli held a long sword, his eyes filled with murderous intent as he pointed it at Shin Sinan, completely devoid of his usual gentle demeanor. Meanwhile, Shin Sinan leaned lazily on the recliner, lightly pushing the sword tip aside. His voice soft